Hi, I'm Michael Killen. We are filming this show in one of the great places of California in Palo Alto. And I want to share that something that troubles me a lot. The election of Donald Trump threatens the United States as well as the state of California's leadership in trying to reduce greenhouse gases. And you may or may not know, if we don't reduce the greenhouse gases that we are emitting, it makes it very difficult for fish, clams, oysters, and other species in the oceans to have the calcium they need to grow. In other words, greenhouse gases threatens the food supply of the world oceans. And California has a lot of oceans, and the greenhouse gas emissions threaten the livelihood of people in the fishing industry. Also, increasing greenhouse gases makes the forest hotter and drier. And you may notice we are having more horrific firestorms and more frequently than ever before. If you're in the lumber business or if you live in certain rural areas, you have to worry more about getting burned out. And then there is the water of California. And greenhouse gases threaten the water because it is melting the ice caps and the sea is rising, and there is a great fear that a good storm is going to come along and drive water all the way up from the San Francisco Bay into the Delta. And that water, that salt water, can get into the Delta, and before it's stopped, a lot of it can be pumped into the Central Valley farmland, filling that area up with water that you cannot drink, and that is not good for crops. And I have the last point before I get going. Also, the more greenhouse gases go into the atmosphere that are created by fossil fuel, the more we get sick, the more we die. So I have decided that, and I know the state of California is getting itself armed for a real battle with Donald Trump, who is a climate change denier. And this state wants to strengthen its position throughout the state to be ready to do battle with Donald Trump, and he is going to possibly use the media to argue his points like we have never seen before. So I have decided to invite an expert, a man who studies climate change, the existence, the growth, the status of greenhouse gases, and he is the author of an extremely important book. It's sort of a Bible in the world of keeping track of what's going on with the data on the growth of different types of energy and greenhouse gases. And I've invited Ripu to come on this show and help the state in this battle, this pending battle with Donald Trump. And the state has several initiatives in place where they're trying to slow greenhouse gases. And recently, the state decided to focus on an area of emissions that is now the greatest place where emissions are being released, and that is the transportation sector. So I've asked Ripu to come on this show and help share some of his knowledge about the transportation sector and what the state is trying to do. And the state has announced it wants to put 1.6 million electric vehicles on the road by 2025. Let me restate this. The state wants to create an environment in this state that enables the growth of 1.5 million electric vehicles. Ripu.
Good to be here, Michael. Thank you.
It was a long introduction. I mentioned that the transportation sector now is the greatest source of greenhouse gas emission. You study this kind of topic around the clock for years, especially when you worked at SRI International as a fellow. So, am I correct about the transportation sector is now the largest target in this state for reducing emissions?
Yes, it is one of the largest. There are a couple of other ones close together, production of electricity, transportation sector, and the use of energy in homes and offices and things like that. So these are three big targets.
Are you saying the creation of electricity is still in this state using a lot of fossil fuel
Yes.
that emits greenhouse? The amount of greenhouse gas is coming up from creating electricity is on par with transportation?
Oh, yes.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah, well,
It's good to have those numbers. It's good to talk about numbers, really, and I think that's one of the things that I think people will get. I know I can't write the book without numbers, and it gets very important to put them together.
Electricity is all around us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it makes sense for me to agree with you that that is creating
Well,
electricity.
it depends on how you produce the electricity. That's why it is. If you produce from coal, every kilowatt hour of electricity gives you roughly a kilogram or 2 pounds of CO2. If I produce from natural gas, I get about a pound or so of CO2. If I use solar or photovoltaics, I get much less, or close to zero. Nuclear, it's close to zero. So there's a large variation. California has decided to go under its, its first. Let me backtrack just a little bit to put the numbers in perspective. How many million tons, or what are we talking about? Because you talk about global warming, so we are concerned about the global concentrations. We have to do our bit. There's no doubt that. I don't deny that. But we are a very small part. Globally, the world emits about 36 billion tons of CO2 from energy use.
Let me just stop you.
Yes.
36 million.
Billion.
36 billion tons. Tons is a measure of
metric ton, actually. Yeah.
metric ton of weight.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Could I visualize all of that gas? If I was to can I visualize it not just as a weight, as something else? Can you do that for me? No.
I can help you with that. I can help you easily visualize a billion tons.
A billion tons.
I can give you a picture of that. Can you imagine a 1 kilometer? Do you have a feel for how long is a kilometer? It's less than a mile.
Okay.
Okay, 6/10 of a mile. That's a kilometer. Imagine a cube, a kilometer long, a kilometer wide, a kilometer deep. If I fill that pool with water, that's 1 billion tons.
That's 1 billion tons.
If I use it as a mile by mile by mile, it'll be 4 billion tons.
So now how much greenhouse gases did you say are up there already? 400?
We are emitting at the rate of 36 billion tons.
36 billion tons. How, if we were just roughly relate that to cubic water,
Yeah.
how big, how much area?
How much volume are we talking about?
Yeah, how much volume?
Yeah. So as I said, so that will be roughly 9 cubic miles.
9 cubic miles. That's what's up there in the atmosphere.
That's
what we're emitting this year.
Every year, yeah. Currently, that's the rate. And of course, the oil that we use is, that's what the title of the book comes from, is, 90 million barrels a day, roughly. In 1 year, it all adds up to 1 cubic mile.
1 cubic mile. Okay, and I just want to say your book is very valuable for helping experts in the industry, sustainability managers, really simplify the thinking about all these numbers associated with energy and gases.
Yeah. So we were talking about 36 billion tons of CO2. How much does California emit? It's a good question. I wanted to put that in perspective. And you see, it's only about 400, only is a wrong term to use in front of this. It's 400 million tons.
That's 1%.
That's about 1%.
The great state of California emits 1% of the world's greenhouse gases.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, California has been recognizing this problem a lot longer and has taken a leadership role and has to be commended for all the activities, all the different initiatives they've taken. The CO2 emissions from California were on an upward trend for a long time. In 1990, they were about 400 some million tons. It was going up. It had gone up to 450 million tons for a while. 2006 was the AB 32.
That's a law that Schwarzenegger signed.
Assembly Bill 32. They said, we want to cut it down. We want to reverse this trend. And they worked hard to doing that. And the target at that time was that by 2020, we will get back to 1990 levels, which were about 420, some number like that. We beat that. We beat that target before 2020. In the last numbers that I had, we were down to about 413 million tons. So we are headed to about, so we said in SB 32, which was the more recent, that's the Senate bill, so we want to be more aggressive with this. We want to cut it down, not just to 1990 levels, but 40% below the 1990 levels, which means we don't want to get to just 400 or something. We want to get down to 250 million tons, somewhere around that vicinity. And we are already down to 400 roughly.
Okay.
So we still have some ways to go.
You said SB 32. Do you mean SB 350?
I stand corrected. Yes, SB 350. Thank you.
I don't want to imply I know much about
No.
anything.
It's easy to get confused with these. There are too many bills over there, and they're AB 32 and SB 350.
Okay. My question now is, in 2016, remind us how much emissions is the state of California putting out?
So it's close to 400 million metric tons.
And how much this new SB 350
aims to bring it down to about 250 some.
200. Okay, that's 40%.
Below 1990 level.
Okay, so we have a feel. So right now we're putting up how much?
400.
400, and we want it down to
250 or something like that. So it's about 150 to go.
Okay, and I just want to go, how much, I have a car, I have a Prius. A lot of people have cars. Not all of them are Prius, some are electric. On average, how many pounds of emissions am I releasing with my car up into the atmosphere?
So a typical car in the U.S., what the Department of Motor Vehicles gives me the numbers, they use about 700 gallons a year. 700
gallons a year?
Of gasoline.
All right.
So if they burn that, you get roughly 14,000 pounds.
14,000.
Am I correct?
Or is it?
1,400 pounds.
1,400, and 1,400
pounds is less than a ton.
Is less than a metric ton.
Metric ton, yeah.
But for us in America, it's almost 7 tons. It's a 6-something probably. No?
No, it's still less than a ton. 2,000 pounds would be a ton.
So just simplify it. Everybody who has a car in California, on average, how many tons are they putting fossil fuel gases up in the atmosphere, just roughly?
So as I said,
7.
So Yeah, for every car is putting down that many. Now, not everyone in California has a car.
Sure, just those who have.
Those who have. So every car, on average, puts out, and there are about 20 million cars on the road.
Watch that. Good. Now, the state has announced recently it wants to enable 1.5 million electric cars.
Yeah.
First of all, that creates a huge market. It encourages. And so 1.5 million cars with an average price, selling price of $3,500, $4,000.
Something like that.
You are the arithmetic man and the calculus man and the Laplacian. How much is that?
60 billion?
60 billion or trillion?
Billion.
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 So since California...
That's just the cars.
Just the cars. But that has to get the attention of every car maker and would-be car maker in the world. Yeah. That California is creating an environment for new sales for cars that do not emit any greenhouse gases. 1.6 million by 2025. Is that a simple goal or objective to reach? First of all, how many electric cars do we have in the state of California?
200,000.
200,000. So this means increasing it by 1,300,000. Is that easy or hard to do?
Well, it takes a lot to do that. You know, we are not manufacturing fast enough, but hopefully we will be accelerating. And it is a stretch goal. I would say that this is it's not a slam dunk. It requires people to want to buy them, but then it would require, commensurate with that increase in things, charging stations. Sure. Otherwise, people won't buy it.
I think I read in a PG&E document there is one charging station in the PG&E franchise area, which is Northern California or at least Bay Area or whatever, one charging station for every 25 electric cars. I think I read that. That's not a lot.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but because you begin very small. That's the thing. You have to begin very small, but you have to put it at strategic locations where people are, where people want to be, and.
Okay,
but it's a huge. So that's another. When you're talking the billions of dollars, this will add up to billions of dollars as well.
Billions of dollars, and would I be correct to say the state will fail to obtain its objective of 1.5 million cars on the road by 2025 if, and this is the only big thing, if the infrastructure for the charging stations does not develop?
That is correct. I seriously doubt that we will even meet that target without a commensurate increase in this charging station infrastructure.
Okay. Watch that. Now I'd like to go, and I think I know the answer, but not the numbers. Why does the state of California want to enable 1.5 million cars on the road by 2025? What's in it for the state?
So here's another way of looking at it. The annual car sales that's another target in the SB 350. We want to be able to, all the new sales are going to be close to, almost all the new car sales, light duty vehicles, should be electric vehicles. That's one of the goals or something like that. So how many do we sell each year? About 1.6 million cars in California. So we want to get to that level. And we want to build up to that so that each year as we are turning over, because the fleet takes time to turn over.
Yeah, 10, 12 years.
So it's just building it up to that, and you know that you have only 100,000 or 200,000. By the way, 200,000 cars that we have in California is half the number of cars in all of the country. So 50% of the United States electric vehicles are all in California, and mostly in and around Palo Alto. so,
Yeah.
so yes, this is a remarkable place.
So 1.6 million cars on the road that are electric. How much will that reduce new greenhouse gases? Come on, you're the numbers guy.
Yes, I have done that. You asked me the question, so you prepared me. I'm prepared for that. It comes to about 10 million tons if all the electricity is produced without any greenhouse gas emissions. If it is purely zero emissions, and we know that that is not the case.
Okay.
So at best, maybe you can cut down by 5 million metric tons.
5 million metric tons. And the reason you put this qualifier in, it's that these cars are going to get charged up with so-called clean energy, renewable energy, but this state, unfortunately, also buys energy from maybe New Mexico and other places that is created by burning coal.
And natural gas.
And natural gas.
Natural gas, which we burn within this state. And we have a fairly large amount of that. So that's a tall order.
And I think you pointed out to me that there is a certain year on the charts the government puts out where we will not be burning any coal.
California has got, I think the target is that by 2030 or 2025, we will not buy any coal generated electricity. And the target, the way they have designed it, that by the emissions standards that they're putting for power plants, to be less than even the garden variety natural gas. So a garden variety natural gas plant has too high an emission. It has to be better than that.
And what is
better than that?
Yeah, what a more efficient?
More efficient natural gas power production, maybe a combined cycle type that would really boost it up, or kind of combine it with some biomass, because they're giving biomass credit at the moment. So if you have a co-fired, cogeneration, so these are the mechanisms by which you can reduce the per kilowatt hour emissions.
Okay, so a little reality, since California generates 1% of the greenhouse gases, if we reduce that 1% down to 0.5%, in a way we are not making much of a difference. But what is the difference, the real difference the state of California is doing in doing that?
Is showing leadership, is showing people the pathway to doing it.
I agree, and I just want to share, we're almost finished. In terms of creativity, one has to be able to think about the future, and some of us have a hard time doing that, but when we see an organization like the great state of California pointing the way and being a leader, we can then tap in to be part of it. Some more of this in the future, but I have to make a couple of statements. So I'm hoping to make a lot more TV shows that help the state of California share its good messages, primarily with all the main communities in this state. And I'm also planning on increasing the reach of my show. Shortly I will be able to offer my show to every single community in this state to help the state more effectively share its message. And my next event where I'm going to be out speaking will be in San Rafael and the San Geronimo Valley. My guest was Ripu. He's a former executive researcher from SRI International. He's a consultant right now, and I am Michael Killen. And thank you very much. you've studied the size, the shape, the trends of what I call the greenhouse gas monster. And by the way, I know you're a scientist and all of that. Do you get offended that I call this a monster?
No.
Okay.
You are an artist. You are at liberty to do that. Absolutely. And I'm not offended.
Okay. And by the way, I put a fan on its face because what this monster is doing is, in effect, it's sucking in all the pollution, all the fumes from the burning of coal, gas, and oil, and it's getting larger and larger. How big is this monster?
So right now, globally, we are feeding this monster about 36 billion tons of CO2 every year, okay? Just from the use of fossil fuels.
36 billion tons a year. And that is for the United States? Or
no, that's for the world, 7 billion people for the world. So per person, it's about 4.5 tons of CO2 per person, roughly.
Averaged out around the world?
Average out around the world.
4.5 tons.
Per person.
Okay.
Now, there are great disparities in this going around the world. In the United States, we are now emitting, you, me, everybody on average, about 17 tons per person.
So every American on average is emitting 17 tons of greenhouse gases every year. 17.
Every year, 17 tons.
Yeah.
Compare that with if you go somewhere in Europe, for example, Germany or United Kingdom, numbers would be around 9.5 tons.
Okay.
Quite low. In France, it's down to 4.5 tons.
And why is it so low in France?
Well, it's largely because most of their energy, a lot of their energy comes from nuclear power plants, and nuclear power plants don't feed this monster.
Okay, the nuclear is clean.
It's clean.
Clean energy. Renewables are not necessarily clean.
It depends on the practices. There's a lot more details that are needed in there.
Okay, so say it again. How many tons of greenhouse gases am I emitting every year?
About 18 tons a year.
Okay, and the United States vis-a-vis China is, what are those
China
numbers?
is around 9 these days.
9
tons per person.
And
Global average is about 4.5. India is less than 2 tons per person. A lot of countries are, like Vietnam and all, 1.6 tons. Pakistan, 0.9 tons per person. So there's a huge disparity that's there in the world.
Okay, so, and of course you agree, the bigger this monster gets, the more deadly it is to us.